Good morning. This is Father Stephen Kelly from St. John's Church in Detroit. We're continuing our series of daily morning meditations, where we generally look at one or another of the lessons that are assigned for morning or evening prayer, what is known as the Daily Office Lectionary. And let's pick up where we left off yesterday with the story of Lazarus. Yesterday we heard about how Lazarus died. Jesus comes into the city. Martha says, hey, if you'd have been here, my brother would not have died. But even so I know, whatsoever thou doest, God will allow it. And of course, Jesus then goes on to say that, in fact, he is the resurrection and the life, that nobody cometh to the Father except through him. And of course, it is by Jesus Christ that we have the gift of eternal life. And Martha affirms that she knows that he is the Christ. So now we pick up the story where Jesus has heard all this. Martha has heard all this from Jesus. She rushes back to get Mary. John 11, beginning at verse 28. And then she had so said, she went her way and called Mary, her sister, secretly saying, the Master is come, and calleth for thee. As soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came unto him. Now Jesus was not yet come into the town, but was in the place where Martha met him. The Jews then which were with her in the house and comforted her when they saw Mary, that she rose up hastily and went out, followed her, saying, she goeth up to the grave to weep there. Then when Mary was come where Jesus was, and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping which came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled, and said, where have ye laid him? And they said unto him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. Then said the Jews, behold how he loved him. And some of them said, could not this man which opened the eyes of the blind have caused that even this man should not have died? Jesus therefore, again groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. And it was a cave, and a stone laid upon it. Jesus said, take ye away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, saith unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he had been dead for 4 days. Jesus saith unto her, said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldest believe, that thou shouldest see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. And I know that thou hearest me always. Because of the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. And when he had thus spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound with a napkin. Jesus saith unto him, loose him, and let him go. Okay, there's all sorts of stuff to unpack here, more than we can do in this quick morning meditation. But first of all, the most impactful perhaps for us is this idea that Jesus wept, right? He was human in every way except sin. So of course he feels sorrow for those who are in pain. He knows what the resolution is going to be. He knows that he's been sent to raise Lazarus from the dead, but his heart aches for all those who are mourning the death of Lazarus. So that we know Jesus, when we mourn, he mourns with us. He knows our sorrow. But another thing, of course, is that the way he raises Lazarus is with a command. He says, Lazarus, come forth. And I once heard a very wise priest say, he had to call Lazarus by name because had he not, every person in that cemetery would have risen from the dead. Because that's the power that Jesus has. I love that theological thought about it. And of course, what happens? He comes out. And this is something for us to think about when we compare the raising of Lazarus, 4 days in the tomb, Jesus rising from the dead, 3 days in the tomb. And of course, the sign of Jonah, right? 3 days in the belly of the whale. But notice that he comes out bound hand and foot with his grave clothes, right? He's got the grave cloth, the burial cloth already on, and his face was bound with a napkin. And Jesus saith, loose him and let him go. Now, what happens when we hear about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, right? They find the grave clothes lying there and the napkin rolled up and folded and put aside, right? If the disciples were going to steal Jesus' body, they certainly wouldn't take the time to just, to unwrap and leave the clothes there, right? They would have lifted up the body, still wrapped up, and hightailed it out of the tomb. But instead they're there. And of course here Jesus has loosed himself. Maybe he had help with the angels to work on the knots. But that, in fact, Jesus says with Lazarus to loose him and let him go. And in fact, Jesus' resurrection, the grave clothes are still there. So some things to think about as we draw the long thread through all of these stories in the gospel. So today is Friday, and we're getting tons of snow this morning. And so we will have 11:15 Mass and noon stations. If you can get here safely, please do so. If not, you can watch the Mass on the live stream. And God willing, we'll see you in church.